This is episode 680 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to be joined by a return guest, Rebecca Dow, who is going to join us to discuss education policy in the current legislative session and other issues in Santa Fe. But Rebecca heads up the OAK, Opportunities for All Kids project of the Rio Grande Foundation, which works on education reform issues, and also is a returning representative in Santa Fe. So welcome back to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Rebecca.
Hey, thanks for having me. You're getting really close to your 700 episodes. You do some sort of celebration when you hit the milestones?
We really did it at 666. Just kidding. But yeah, that was one of our recent milestones. We'll hit 700 soon enough. And I joke about 666. But Rebecca, lots going on with regard to a lot of issues on education in particular up in Santa Fe, but not so much through the legislature. A judge has ruled that the governor cannot force districts to go 5-day school weeks or 180 days per year. And I know you don't take these things on from the legal end, but OAK and the Rio Grande Foundation both advocated for and highlighted the overreach that the governor undertook here with regard to this. So it's got to be gratifying for you as it is me that this judge saw things our way.
Yes, sorry for the background there. We've got a stack of certificates to sign that I was just handed. I'm right off the House floor and the floor session just started. But yes, can you imagine? So I started this journey at the Roundhouse in 2016. And back then, we have been trying to fight for local control over the school calendar. PED continues to take more and more away from the elected local school board and standardizing things at the state level. I mean, we're talking about out of the 100 top schools, 60 of them are 4-day school weeks. That is incredible. And the number of students attending the 4-day school weeks, because they are so rural, there are reasons why they're 4-day school weeks. If every one of them reached these proficiency goals, it would change the outcomes by less than 4% statewide. It's just such a mismatched, I mean, it's such a disconnect. And I don't know where it came from, but the governor sure fought for it. And it's a perfect example of the wisdom of our founding fathers who made these 3 branches of government. So the legislators said, no, we passed a bill to affirm our commitment to leaving the calendars to the local communities. And then the governor signs, she proceeds. And then we have to go to the judiciary to file suit. Now, what a shame. What a waste of taxpayer funds. But we did get the outcome that we were looking for. And, I really feel bad for these school districts that have to deal with the whiplash of rules and regulations and guidance that comes from PED. Another really good example is when we said, the body hasn't been making a commitment to high quality, affordable food for all students. And they passed the free school lunch bill, which, maybe it used to be based on income. Now it's everybody who wants it. And the very first line in all of the bills say, giving PED rulemaking authority. And as a legislator, I've said, I don't want to give PED rulemaking authority. I want to make it crystal clear in the bill. And they're like, that's statutory, that's constitutional. You must say giving PED rulemaking authority. So they turn this simple thing like free lunch meals into the most crazy, ridiculous composting, 20% local food, when we have some of the most disappointing math and reading scores in the nation. And they start focusing on what types of fruits and vegetables and the color of the plate and composting and homegrown, like food grown at the school. And I know Oak and Rio Grande Foundation submitted comments on that as well. And there was some compromise on this. But I have to give credit to Rio Grande Foundation and also Oak, a very new organization, this effort that just started in June for, really rallying the troops and getting a lot of comment around this issue. And it's a big win. It's a big win.
Yeah, and considering that the legislature agreed on a bipartisan basis with the 4-day school week districts, I mean, I don't expect you to have a crystal ball there, but I would expect that the governor will kind of take her loss and take her lumps and and end her discussion of this particular issue from kind of the force perspective. I know she said something in her State of the State address about uh, trying to put money in the budget to encourage the districts to do that, but I never thought that money was really the top line issue here for a lot of these districts. It's just, a lot of kids commuting and parents and school district officials, teachers, bureaucrats, etc., having to commute very long distances, and it just time is more valuable than money in this
Well,
case.
and they were able to document and show that because they don't have school on Friday or school on Monday, that the students actually had more seat time, more instructional time than students with a 5-day week. And in these rural areas where they travel to sports games and any of their New Mexico Activity Association activities, they travel on Friday because there is such a long distance and they're not missing any class time. And they're able to show how hard it is to gain and retain qualified staff in that 4-day week. That's the incentive for folks to come. And all the career technology and the enrichment activities and the tutoring and homework help for students that are behind that are offered on Fridays, they're actually able to demonstrate that they have more seat time and their student outcomes are improving at a greater level than those with a 5-day week. There's no data tied to this. I am a little concerned because it was in her State of the State address, but I'm super proud of the districts. I think over 63 out of 87 joined the lawsuit, and there's all kinds of compromises and mediation that was offered, and they stuck to their guns and they won.
All right. Well, that is the good news. I don't want to say that we won't have any other good news here, but unfortunately for New Mexico, our test results in the National Assessment of Educational Progress, that test was published this week, and it's more of the same. In 2022, we highlighted the fact that New Mexico was dead last, 52nd in the NAEP, according to all major categories: fourth grade reading, fourth grade math, eighth grade reading, and eighth grade math. And if anything, things seem to be getting worse in the land of enchantment. Now, I know that's near and dear to your heart and everyone who deals with education policy in New Mexico, with the seeming exception of the legislature, the governor, and or at least the majority in the legislature, and media outlets, which really haven't talked much about the NAEP results. But what is the NAEP? Why is the NAEP so important to education policy analysts and policymakers like yourself?
So it is something that we must do. It's the only test where we compare ourselves against the rest of the nation. Otherwise, we're just comparing ourselves against each other in our state. So I think that's an important thing to note, is it's the only test that compares our students to other students across the nation taking the same test. And folks in New Mexico don't like it because they say it's a snapshot of time. Our children are different. They're low income. They're minority. They're at risk. But New Mexico Catholic schools and Catholic schools across the nation also opted in. And Catholic schools also represent a majority, especially in New Mexico, of low income, at risk minority children. Same demographics. And those Catholic school students outperformed traditional and charter schools nationally. And they say it's the snapshot of time. It's not fair, but every other community and every other state had the same snapshot at the same time. And so you can't completely dismiss it. And that's what the state does. You can speak to Mississippi. I know you're passionate about that, because we used to always say, thank goodness for Mississippi. It was us, same low income, at risk, children with these barriers to learning. And we would, sometimes we get 49th because Mississippi got 50th. You can elaborate on what Mississippi's done. Proof that those barriers are not the factor.
Yeah. So what, you're somebody who deals with education, both in terms of managing schools and actually managing an institution, as well as the policy front. Uh, I know we talk a lot about choice, and I guess we'll transition a little bit here. Uh, is it as simple as we need school choice? I know Mississippi has some things that they are doing. Do you see any, not so much policy movement up in Santa Fe, but when you talk to your colleagues, especially on the Democratic side of the aisle, because they control things, what do they say about the NAEP test? Do they just dismiss it as something?
It's just dismissed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't, free and equitable education, that is the federal law and why we must compare ourselves to students in other states. And the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit and is was settled. I think the ruling was in 15, I believe, and the Susana Martinez administration had appealed. And then when MLG came in, she accepted the ruling. It was mainly about money and targeting certain demographics of students that Yazzie Martinez that had brought the suit. And so here we are, 47% increase in funding, and enrollment's declining. The students that are enrolled have poorer attendance, and we're not seeing improved student outcomes. Bipartisan. If money were the solution, we would keep the money going. Money clearly is not the solution. And you mentioned choice. One of my favorite bills. I don't know. You love transparency and accountability, and I do too. And you want to see some standardized and standards for measuring progress. At this point, my thought on it is we've tried every single thing under the sun except choice. So if I see a choice bill, I'm supporting it. Whether there's a homeschool tax credit bill out there, I'm voting for it. I'm signing on. I love Senator Shindo has, it's called the Indian Student Compact Act, Education Compact Act, and it's saying, at the federal level, they're allowed to fill out some forms and do self-determination. You see that with healthcare, you see it with some economic initiatives, but they're basically asking for this self-determination at the state level that say, we think we can do better because our local community, they know the students, they reflect the culture, we know the families, and we think that we can create a model. We can't do worse. So give us a try. We think we can do better. And those are the two big bills. Of course, tax credits that follow students and every single bit of data out there. Some look at classroom size, some look at education, some look at mentorship of teachers. But without exception, the parent is the number one indicator of student success. And when we engage parents and we engage the people who are closest to the children and the communities, I believe that's when we'll see student outcomes improve.
Is there anything that you mentioned a couple of things, and maybe you could elaborate briefly on them, but is there anything significant? Obviously Native Americans, we care deeply about them as well as all the other ethnic groups, Hispanics, white kids,
Everybody.
either Asian kids, whatever it is in New Mexico. And I really am not a fan of, in addition to kind of just the lack of transparency concern, targeting things based on race and ethnicity. But that's the world we live in. So are there any bills that you're excited about, or have you seen any ESA or broad school choice bills, or even reforms like Mississippi up there, and maybe they have a chance?
Not yet. Now I'm on new committees. I used to be on education. This time around, I'm on appropriations and transportation. So I'm not seeing as many of the policy bills. They will end up in appropriations eventually, but right now, I mean, I'm really focused on House Bill 2, but I haven't seen any. I would think that I would hear from industry. We still have a couple on the Republican side that we haven't filed yet. So we do have the traditional school choice bills that we will be introducing. And there are some reforms on accountability and transparency. We took away the A through F report card. With that, the boundaries of where children must attend, having the freedom to move outside of an F school or a D school into one that's better. There's not a lot of A schools throughout the state, but you could transfer to those A schools. When that scoring went away, so did the opportunity to leave your traditional zip code boundary. So there's an effort called No More Lines. You remove the boundary of kids in public school in charter and allow those parents to choose the school that best meets the student needs. Now that bill's about to be filed, and I'm excited about that. And then there are some bills around, there are dashboards, and actually co-sponsored with a senator, a Democrat senator when I served before, that required the PED, the district, once dollars hit the district, they're unrestricted. We don't know where they go. So they could be generated by a child whose English is their second language, or they're low income, at risk, homeless. But once those dollars hit the district, the vast majority of those are unrestricted, and they don't have to account for them, how they spend the per pupil funds that are raised. And so the dashboard said, tell us at the district level how you're spending those dollars. We want to add to that dashboard tell us the outcomes of how you're spending those dollars. So we want to see from schools the progress that students are making and have some transparency around student outcomes and measurements. Those are gone right now. They're very fluffy, subjective words that a parent could read and feel positive about what's happening with their student, even if their student is ranking 50th in the nation, 52nd in the nation.
So to summarize, nothing that you would call really great accountability, nothing significant on the choice side of things. We're likely to go through another 60-day session here with no significant reforms.
I would call the opportunity for tribal communities to have school choice. I would call it a great opportunity for us. I would hope that if this bill passes, that all the best experts around the nation would just rein in on our state and help those students succeed. If that happened, I believe it would pave a way for that effort to go statewide. So, I mean, if you want to call something, unprecedented in New Mexico, the opportunity for any student, any parent to have choice and be in charge of their kids' education, it's pretty unprecedented. We tie dollars to facilities, and the union usually runs the show. So I hope it gets through. I want to be optimistic, and then we've got to help those students thrive.
All right. Well, not exactly groundbreaking in terms of a broad approach to education. Are there any Democrats who, behind closed doors or maybe more privately, are a little more oriented towards reform, or are they pretty much all just?
They are. Of course they are, and they know who got them to office, and primarily it's unions and trial lawyers, and the unions absolutely oppose. They're tied to a facility. They're really tied. It is institutionalized. They run the show, and they don't want to give up control. And even when students are thriving in charter schools, they try to put moratoriums on the charter schools because charter schools aren't unionized. So even when a public school choice is available, they oppose it. And isn't that heartbreaking?
Yeah, well, it is very unfortunate the way the special interests tend to dominate New Mexico politically, especially when it comes to education, for sure. So, all right, well, go ahead.
Students and their parents. That's my special interest group.
Yeah, no, I think we agree on that. All right, so let's move into more broad policy issues in Santa Fe. I'll kind of set the table here by saying that as we talk, we are finishing the second week of the legislative session. It was the governor's State of the State address that kicked it off at noon on Tuesday 2 weeks ago. And I know this will come out technically on Thursday, but so that's basically, we're kind of ending the first quarter of this session. And as I saw it, things really started out fast, of course, on HB 11, paid family leave. Some of the oil and gas bills have been moved more aggressively, but that also, especially on paid family leave, has slowed down a bit. I'm not seeing the frenetic pace that we saw in the first several days of the legislative session. Am I incorrect in that? Are things moving quickly behind the scenes, or where do you kind of summarize where things stand right now in this session?
1 second, Paul. Yes, ma'am. Are you done yet? Not yet. Are they started? Have they started? I am so sorry. Almost time. Okay, they're going to give me. It's 14th day at the state capitol. There are over 200 students. I have a couple dozen from my district. The floor session started, and so I'm hoping we make it through this. I think I absolutely agree with you. When they had this rocket docket a few years back, and people are referring to the pace and the way it feels like the rocket docket, and they're saying there isn't a rocket docket, but I absolutely believe there is. For folks that are listening, the first set of bills are held back by the majority, and the majority happens to be extremely progressive, and so they can keep back the first 10 bills, 20 bills, 30 bills, and by rule, by precedent, the bills are supposed to be heard in order, although they have the numbers and the authority to suspend rules at any time. And so, of course, the most egregious bills came right out the door, which I think is pretty, it's not the process as it should be. You've got a whole lot of new members, lots of new members, who don't even understand the process. their bills, they'll say, oh, well, the bill was vetted during the interim, just trust us and vote for it, and those kind of things. And or they haven't really gotten their grounding, and there's no time for their constituents to reach out to them. And I mean, there's some of the most egregious bills are being pushed really, really quickly. Word on the street is that paid family medical leave, which would have been heard in Commerce last Friday, already the second committee and handed straight to the floor, has run into some hiccups because this version's even worse than the last version. And it's not that there isn't bipartisan support for some sort of form of a paid family medical leave, especially when it comes to maternity leave. But this is one of the broadest, and it is just, first of all, it's New Mexico's largest tax increase since its statehood. They want to call it um, a new entitlement program, but it is a mandatory deduction from your paycheck. You don't want to call it a tax, fine. I call it a tax. You're going to get to keep less of your money, and your employer is going to have a new added deduction as well. So this is going to cause inflation. It will cost consumers more cost, drive up the cost of goods. But we are in a workforce crisis. We have one of the lowest workforce participation of the traditionally the people who should be working. They're just choosing to opt out of working. And so we're so overregulated that when you have a nurse that's out for paid family medical leave, there's not another qualified nurse to take their place. When a social worker's out, behavioral health is a priority. For this session, there's not another psychiatrist, social worker, nurse. These practitioners don't exist in excess to become the sub. When you think about reforms in education, so many of our districts already have teachers on waivers, and now they're going to have long-term subs. What it does to the quality of the workforce is probably one of the most consequential things. Home health care providers, where are they going to come from? Who's going to be serving the Meals on Wheels and delivering to our indigent population? And so it's just crazy to me that in our largest surplus, $11 billion budget, that they want to impose a new tax rather than taking this out of a surplus. Okay, I think I'm going to have to go, Paul.
Okay, well, that's the way things go when we're dealing with the legislative session. I appreciate your time today, Rebecca, and
you're going to wrap this up. I sure hope you talk about what's happening in House District 6, where both names nominated that the governor has on her desk have said that they will not vote for paid family medical leave. These are Democrat representatives from a district that's the majority is Native American and Hispanic, being left without representation because they could be the deciding vote.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. Go head out to the floor and we'll finish that conversation briefly here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. So real quick, we have been following the situation in House District 6, which involves the retirement and subsequent passing of Representative Eliseo Alcon. He was a strong or firm supporter of paid family leave and pretty progressive in his votes, at least. So he had left that seat, and because it hits multiple counties, it was up to the local county commissions. And I always get these mixed up. I think it's Cibola and McKinley, as I recall, who were to put a name forth for the replacement. Both county commissions said that their preference was for a gentleman named Harry Garcia, who was a state representative, did lose in the primary in a different district, but was saying he wanted to move to a house or trailer or whatever in the district, and that he owned subsequently or previously. And the governor was not happy, didn't want him, rejected him, and has told the county commissions to put someone else into the seat. There's been a fair amount of reporting on this back and forth, but if you want to call it a conspiracy theory, I'll call it a conspiracy theory. I think their original intent on the Democrat side was to push paid family leave very quickly before this situation was resolved in an effort to get paid family leave and possibly another couple of bills across the finish line before one additional no vote. And of course, paid family leave failed by just 2 votes, with several changes to the House of Representatives, especially some progressives replacing moderate Democrats. There was going to be a very, very close vote at some point. But it does seem that as Rebecca mentioned, they have encountered some challenges at the House Commerce Committee, and that bill, HB 11, again, has slowed down. We will be keeping everyone abreast of it on social media as well as on the RGF blog, because paid family leave is really our top priority, killing that this legislative session. And I think the shenanigans are afoot, shall we say. So we'll go ahead and conclude this conversation, which, as you're trying to get people engaged up in Santa Fe during the session, it is tricky. And Rebecca, I appreciate the time she was able to spend with us. But thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.